a subtle sign that someone is very intelligent? Story 1. When being taught to do something new, they care just as much, if not more, about why it should be done a certain way as they do about what needs to be done. Story 2. They can adapt their communication style, vocabulary, tone, content, etc. to fit the situation and people they're talking to, and it seems completely natural. Story 3. My freshman college roommate was a mechanical engineer. One of the first nights we were in the dorms, we had pizza delivered. We didn't eat it all, but the pizza box didn't fit inside the dorm fridge. He went all-out origami and transformed the box into a smaller, perfectly square box that did fit inside the fridge in about 12 seconds. I'm pretty good at math, but not necessarily geometry. My mind was blown. I spent 35 years in academia between my student-teacher years, and he's still one of the 3 smartest people I've ever met. His ability to just do it is dumbfounding to me. His retirement project is transforming his father's 1963 Mercedes convertible into a hybrid that has a small diesel engine that runs on vegetable oil, along with a totaled Tesla Model S battery pack. Story 4. They are okay with being perceived as stupid by asking questions. If we hold back in fear, we'll never truly learn. Plus, it's a good way to show others it's okay to question things if you don't understand. Better off if we're on the same page instead of hoping things work out without being informed. Story 5. When they take the time to filter through any possible misunderstandings in an argument by asking questions to help them better understand the idea that's being presented, instead of immediately assuming their first interpretation of the argument is the correct one. Something that's always bugged me is when my argument gets misunderstood and then attacked from angles where supposed errors exist, when those errors rose out of the listener's own misinterpretation. Story 6. I have met several off-the-charts intelligent people. One thing I noticed that they have in common was low self-esteem. They had an actual low self-esteem club at the science fiction club I belonged to. The guy who did a lot of the calculations that allowed the Voyager probes to make the grand tour of our solar system was a member of the club. All he could think about were what he didn't know or what he physically couldn't do. The common issue I observed from these bright folks was relentless school bullying. We lose so many of these geniuses to depression, suicide, self-medication, or just flat-out self-inflicted mediocrity. Society in the US does a shitty job of nurturing intelligence. It makes me incredibly angry how many of these people's potential were wasted. I don't include myself in that club. My intelligence is dead average. Frank Zappa said it best when he said that intelligence is treated like a hideous deformity by American society. Story 7. They get excited sharing their knowledge and talk to people instead of at them. This probably isn't a 100% guarantee that someone is intelligent, but it's something I've noticed more often in intelligent people than in people who are just knowledgeable. Story 8. I have a friend who is a genius. One thing where it is very clear is when we were learning automation software, Siemens stuff, TIA Portal, etc. Dude taught himself pretty much the entire program in 3 days, just by using the inbuilt wiki. Story 9. If someone is actually intelligent, they don't put down the intelligence of others or make others' accomplishments seem small. I've never met a genuinely intelligent person who feels the need to directly or even indirectly hint that someone else is not so smart. Story 10. One thing I've noticed is that really intelligent people tend to be empathetic. They've quietly analyzed many situations and have thought critically about them. Story 11. They pause to think about a novel question instead of instantly blurting out an answer. Sometimes people think it means they've been stumped and claim victory. No, they're thinking, analyzing, and formulating a reply. Story 12. I usually find that creativity, humor, and verbal acuity are good signs of intelligence. I generally see lack of empathy, low openness, and seeing the world in absolutes as signs of low intelligence. Also, I notice many socially inept people tend to consider themselves intelligent, almost just because they're socially inept and or not good at sports. It's as if their ego needs something to value themselves on, so they assume they must be smart. It's entirely possible that the other guy in your life who makes you insecure is taller, stronger, more charismatic, and smarter. Such is life. Lastly, people, especially tech people, will often conflate technical domain knowledge with intelligence, which is absolutely not always the case. Yes, there is a bare minimum intelligence required to be an engineer, etc., but being an awkward senior engineer doesn't mean you're just too smart for normies to understand and lack of a specific domain. Knowledge has all to do with intelligence. Story 13. I find that highly intelligent people have the ability to think in complex hypotheticals while being nuanced. I find that wise people have enough patience and forethought to consider longer-term things and be considerate in ways that are hard to take into account. Story 14. The ability to ask questions. They know what they know and are aware of what they don't. but they are not threatened by knowledge they don't have, but rather excited about learning the new thing. Story 15. Being able to read people very well. Adjust communication style to communicate most effectively. Also be able to read the room. Sense of humor is in there too. Story 16. Dry humor. Pulling it off requires an observant, quick wit with a nonchalant delivery that almost downplays its own cleverness. Like it means their immediate passing thoughts are often profound enough to be very funny without any real effort. Story 17. I worked with a lad who was very like this. He could make any conversation really intriguing and thought-provoking, often causing people to reconsider their perspective and position. He was a HR manager that could defuse any situation, helping people mend bridges and resolving issues, because he could get both parties to compromise and put aside resentment. He had IQ and EQ to go a lot further than the role he was in, but he was happy, and maybe that is another little tidbit of intelligence. Story 18. Half of intelligence is critical lateral thinking, and the other half is comprehension. You need to identify what you already know, determine what you need to know, and then how to get there. Identifying the path to knowledge requires you to be attentive and ask the important questions. There is a desired outcome. Whether or not you get there, you have intention which focuses your efforts. With this in mind, I find a subtle sign someone's is very intelligent is when they ask questions and either specify why they are asking or word the question in a way that shows intent. You can clearly tell where they are going with their questions, or if they happen to be asking irrelevant questions, you both figure it out much faster. It helps them get the information they want, but also helps the person answering understand their train of thought and focus their answers. Story 19. They understand that as you begin to learn more about a subject, you enter into this situation where you believe you know far more than you really do. You realize that you know so much more than those who know nothing about that subject, but not that everything you are learning probably has 100 types of nuance and requires deeper understanding. It's kind of related to the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less you know about a subject, the more you think you know, because you don't realize how much there is to know that you don't. It's how you can get people who spend a few minutes on YouTube or Google, spout a bit of lingo they just learned, and don't realize that there's a reason it takes 4 years just to get a bachelor's in most topics, and many more to become a specialist. It's infuriating to those who actually have put in the time of study and experience. So yeah, a person who can show that they have some knowledge of a topic, yet remain humble because they realize that there is always more to know. The more you learn about a topic, eventually you realize just how much more there is to know, and it's important to get through that initial arrogance. I fell into this myself when I was in my late teens. I became fairly well-read on sustainable horticulture and botany in general. I got a job that was pretty advanced, and I was pretty good at it. Yet after a while I realized that my boss, he was like a plant wizard. He could tell you what the weather was like at night, a week ago, by looking at the way the flowers presented on the tomatoes we grew. I learned some amazing from him once I got over my ego. Story 20. They have a nuanced perspective and are able to articulate it well. They understand that things tend not to be black and white, but shades of gray, and they listen intently to others during a conversation. Story 21. They mispronounce less common words. It means they probably haven't heard those words spoken much, and they learn the words by reading. They're curious and self-educated. Story 22. They listen way more than they talk. When they do talk, it's often something along the lines of, "Huh, that's interesting," or "I don't know, but I'll try to find out." Story 23. Being gracious when other people catch up to them. It means they're very used to being in that situation and have realized that it's not worth it to point out or make a big deal of being right in the first place. Story 24. They're storytellers. They craft narratives for themselves and for others that are compelling, that make the world make sense, that invigorate and install a goal, a mission. Story 25. Avoiding the academic talk writing. I had a professor in my master's program flat out tell everyone he hated academic writing, and he made sure it reflected in all his work. All his work read like a story. No technical language, just plain and simple that anyone can pick up and follow along. A true expert in his field. Story 26. People who ask for others' opinions regularly from a neutral perspective, as if the idea or thought is not their own. More of an open-ended question. Often, smart people are very confident internally, but seek the opinions of others because they are conscious and aware of their own biases and flaws. In that same fashion, they usually also have the emotional intelligence to set aside their ego, or take a loss, if it ultimately results in a better future result or an important lesson learned. They listen and observe more than they talk and choose their battles wisely. And it is why, more often than not, they come out ahead in most challenging situations they might find themselves in. These types of people, you'd never know how smart they are from their docile nature until someone ignorant, rude, or insulting challenges them on their competency. Then it's an intellectual slaughter. Story 27. Someone who is skeptical at first but listens to reason and facts to determine an opinion that they are willing to change if someone comes to them with other contrary facts. Story 28. A lot of these observations are more indicative of people with high emotional intelligence, which is a very valuable and unique gift. Some are pointing out the negative actions of narcissistic or very egocentric people, which they consider faux intelligence. While these are negative, it really doesn't speak to the lack of intelligence but rather the negatives of their personalities. Some really intelligent people don't necessarily develop good social skills, but are still extremely intelligent. If you put your ego aside, you can learn a lot from these people. They also don't do what seems offensive on purpose and can take feedback very well. Story 29. A lack of mental barriers, and they are just willing to try and do anything. Their beliefs are only as strong as the information they know so far, and they are willing to change those beliefs willfully if new information presents itself. A want for personal growth that never stops with age. Story 30. They're good at learning stuff. They ask the right questions and pick up new skills knowledge quite efficiently. The definition of intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge. Story 31. It's impressive to watch someone hit it off with everyone they interact with. Making strangers laugh and making folks comfortable at any given moment isn't as easy as some may believe. There's definitely some intelligence involved. Story 32. A huge number of the responses here are emotional intelligence, rather than IQ. Not the same thing. There are people with average intelligence who are very emotionally intelligent. I have a cat with genius-level EQ. Story 33. Not talking too much or asking constant good questions. Often, an intelligent person always wants to learn more, so they'll either stay silent and listen or ask questions that deepen their understanding. Story 34. One subtle sign of intelligence I've noticed is the tendency to overthink or deeply analyze situations. This can sometimes lead to social awkwardness or difficulty in social settings, as intelligent individuals often consider multiple perspectives and potential outcomes before speaking or acting. This depth of thought can make spontaneous social interactions challenging. Another sign is a preference for spending time alone. Story 35. They're always quiet. Happiness is so rare with intelligent people. They are so smart that they know that their knowledge still lacks so much and there is still so much to learn. Very self-aware. Story 36. I feel like a lot of people here mix up raw intelligence with emotional intelligence and social skills or wisdom. My partner is gifted, and so is one of the kids, which is quite a thing to navigate in our education system. His strength is simply put a combination of excellent pattern recognition elevated by education. He is efficient in everything he does, and his immediate comprehension of complex problems is downright scary. In a can he see through the matrix? Kind of way. He is still only human. He has crappy days and sometimes gets angry and talks like to people. He can't explain everything in simple terms, dumb it down, but there is no question he grasps the matter at hand. He isn't always intrigued by everything or curious. He doesn't have specific language he uses. He isn't always humble. He brags when he wins complex board games or in chess, or simply counts cards as if it's nothing. When you ask him about something, he might just say, "I don't know why I get it. My brain just runs that way." Very intelligent people aren't always just excellent. They are just people. Since knowing him, I don't believe that there is signs of intelligence you can read from social behavior. All of that is learned. And while it might come easier to intelligent people, at the end of the day, you will only know if you see a demonstration of said intelligence. Because whoever you're trying to assess, they might just be well-adjusted, kind, or curious people. Story 37. Intelligent to do what? You can have a brilliant mind and fly through school with top grades, but as soon as you get a nail and a hammer in your hand and something practical to do, it all falls apart. Or you can be excellent practical work, but at school you are struggling because you don't understand theoretical stuff. The point is that a lot of smart people are good at different things, and measuring how smart people are can be extremely challenging because we are so different. Story 38. They somehow know how to do a lot of things and understand a lot of things that are often high concept or have variances in how they work. Nuances, so to speak. People who are black and white usually aren't very intelligent. Story 39. Vocabulary. You can use slang and swear all the time like me and my friends, but if you have a decently large vocabulary, it shows that you're intelligent. Story 40. Uses a rich vocabulary, but never to the point of incomprehensibility or overspeaking. Someone who uses a word like avuncular in everyday speech is just trying to show off. Story 41. I've always admired rappers that are able to come up with complex lyrics off the top of their herd while simultaneously staying on cadence with the music. like Lil Wayne or Eminem, for example, when they're just freestyling lyrics. Story 42. At minimum, problem prediction, modeling, planning, solving. They ask a lot of questions that efficiently breaks down and assimilates new subject matter information. They seek understanding, not memorization or verbal regurgitation. Story 43. I don't even know how to define intelligence anymore. I'm pretty good at math. My wife has to use her fingers to add 53. However, my wife can walk into a random kitchen, find a few random ingredients that seemingly wouldn't go together, and whip up an amazing dinner without using a recipe. I can't do that. I can cook, but I need to use a recipe or work from a small list of ingredients I'm comfortable with. I can't do what she does. She can't do what I do. How do I determine who is more intelligent? I can play the piano a little bit. I'm not great at it. I can sit at the keys and, using sheet music and lots of practice, work my way through a relatively simple piece. Others can just sit at a piano and just play music. Let's take Dave Grohl, for example. I guarantee that I got higher standardized test scores than he did. I definitely did better in school. I have an advanced degree. I don't think Dave Grohl finished high school. But Dave Grohl taught himself a bunch of instruments and, without even being able to read music, was able to be the front man of one of the biggest rock groups of all time. He's also written a best-selling autobiography, and is it well written? Does my degree make me smarter than Dave Grohl? I doubt it. I think most people have their own strengths and weaknesses. When they are doing something that aligns with their strengths, they seem pretty freaking smart. When they do things that showcase their weaknesses, they can seem pretty freaking stupid. Story 44. I taught a group of gifted elementary school students. There was one girl who never talked much, but when the rest of the group was involved in a disagreement or problem, she'd cut right to the core of the issue with 1 or 2 sentences. Everyone else would stop dead in their tracks, think a moment, and start nodding. That was impressive. Story 45. They can admit they are wrong and apologize. They can change. An intelligent person can argue and be persuaded, but can also recognize they may never persuade the other. Story 46. My husband wins any game with a strategy almost every time, without fail, no matter who he's playing with. He analyzes the rules, plays once, and figures out a path to win. It's amazing. Story 47. They are able to interpret information fast and differently. We were in an academy, people from all parts of the world. We were learning to use a specific, super sophisticated software. We all had detailed steps on how to go around a task in the software, but we all were getting it wrong. But this one 16-year-old Norwegian boy was way ahead of us all the time. He could decipher the information like he built the instructions. To this day, I can't figure out how quickly he adapted and learned everything. Was like a sponge that could grasp everything. I literally saw him code a whole new tool without having any prior knowledge in a week, just by reading resources on the internet. Good, decent guy and a born genius. Story 48. They use the search feature on Reddit and can see in the search results that this question is asked on the weekly basis. Satisfied with the answers they find on previous posts, they do not create another post asking the exact same question. Story 49. How calm they are when presented with A, an opposing viewpoint, B, an outrageous statement which clearly looks false, C, how naturally curious they are, and D, how comfortable they are in admitting they don't know something. And there's no way for me to explain it very well, but how deeply compassionate they are. Story 50. A subtle sign of intelligence is the ability to listen actively and ask insightful questions, showing genuine curiosity and understanding of complex topics. Story 51. The speed at which their brain works. I deal with junior barristers for work, ill work on something for months, and they pick up all the nuance and core arguments within a few minutes. Blows my mind every time. Story 52. Critical thinking skills. Asking questions. Not believing everything at face value. It baffles me how many people see something on Facebook and don't think twice about the accuracy of the post. Also, being willing to change their view on something with more information. Story 53. Humility in their knowledge. And when I say that, I really mean 3 key things. First, a willingness to not be right. Second, a lack of judgment when someone else is wrong. And third, a willingness to sound dumb. You will very often see people get something wrong or something that isn't wrong, but other people think it is, or say something that sounds dumb, and then get on by other people for being wrong, and then something like fight or flight kicks in, and they either double down or just leave. Social media is the worst for this cause. It's so easy to nitpick the smallest detail of something, or invoke one of the scary logical fallacies on some rando. But the proper response when talking to someone should never be to put them down. And genuinely intelligent people are like this. Instead, they'll hand you the information you're missing so you can get to the right answer. Story 54. They enjoy their own company. They find nearly all things in the natural world interesting. They don't watch TV. They don't ever really get angry. They never seem to give anyone bad advice. They don't get excited nearly as much as normal people do about things like going to favorite restaurants, getting new clothes, a new car they just bought, etc. They don't care for large groups and huge social gatherings. Story 55. Having the habit of questioning something regardless of the source, merely because it's a good habit to question the validity, veracity, and applicability of whatever idea they are presented with. Story 56. They all answer questions like these with traits they happen to have. That's how you know when someone is really smart, because dumbasses would never even respond right. Story 57. They don't rely on vocabulary reminiscent of I am very smart just because they happen to know what it means, and or brag about how great their education is. Story 58. They're always willing to learn. They aren't fixed on what they already know, not taking anything for granted but wanting to understand the why and how of things. Story 59. I work for our National Science Research Organization. Introversion for sure. I've never seen such a giant group of awkward people in one place before I worked there. Story 60. I had a kid in my grade school that was skipped 2 grades because he was so smart. As of 30 years later, he is a local celebrity for owning a hugely profitable company that gives back millions to his hometown. Story 61. Comedy. People who are super quick and sharp with jokes show that they have a fast analytical mind that can make connections and similes analogies that are actually funny. Show me that they are clever as. Story 62. An intelligent person understands nobody is stupid, and they can learn from everyone, anyone, can adapt to pretty much anything, anyone, anywhere, ask more questions than they have answers. Understand that most of the time the answer lies in the question itself. Story 63. I was thinking a lot about this after watching an interview with Magnus Carlsen, who is the best chess player in the world. He was asked about his IQ, to which he replied that IQ tests are meaningless and don't quantify intelligence. He is right. Intelligence can manifest in so many different ways, be it through problem solving, articulating sentences, memorization, painting, music, learning language, and even things like socializing and being funny. They're all forms of intelligence. So my answer to your question would be that excelling in just about anything is a sign of intelligence. Story 64. In group settings, they speak last, or sometimes not at all. I find that the most intelligent people I've ever met tend to seem quiet, but in reality, they just absorb everything going on from the sidelines until they can respectfully add their thoughts to the pot. Story 65. I can't actually answer this. There was this super smart person answering questions on Quora who I admired. Once they admitted their IQ was 90 or below. I was so surprised. Yeah, solving IQ tests is a skill. It's not an accurate way to measure intelligence. It's generally terrible for PPL with dyslexia, etc. too. But that's when I realized what I admired in their answers wasn't intelligence. It was the humility and the disillusionment. They answered as they saw it, as it was, unbiased. That down-to-earth meant is so much more valuable than intelligence. Story 66. They don't talk about how smart they are or what credentials they may have. Everyone I've met who is really smart doesn't talk about it. Intelligence has been glorified by media, movies, TV, etc., and the vast majority of people will never understand that it's not some miracle gift that we've been given. Story 67. Providing sources or reasons, even during normal conversations. So instead of X is an important political issue, they would say, according to the New York Times, X is an important issue. Or, since X can lead to other problems such as Y and Z, it is an important issue. Or instead of, you should hold a hammer at the end, opposing the head, they would say, my father taught me to hold a hammer at the end opposing the head. Or, you should hold a hammer at the end opposing the head to gain more leverage, thus increasing the strength of the strike. Also, being able to separate their own opinion from fact, and stating it as such. So instead of, that movie was bad, they would say I didn't like that movie. Or this movie was just mindless action, which is not my cup of tea. Story 68. Their willingness to learn new things or consider different ideas. As many others have pointed out in different ways in this topic, someone who realizes that they don't know everything is open to learning more and their opinions and thinking evolving.